Good morning, You Can Heal family, or maybe it's afternoon or evening for you. I know for me right now it's early in the morning. You guys, yesterday I went on an errand before my daycare kids came, so I didn't read in the morning, and then my day just kept going and going. And I got home last night, probably at like 10 o'clock, and I said, I'm just going to lay down for 10 minutes and then get up and do what I need to do. And I woke up at like 5:30 this morning. So I guess I needed the rest. So anywho, we're going to start today the book of Nehemiah. But first we're going to look at the introduction. And as you know, it's broken down by book, author, time, and then the Christ of Nehemiah, the keys in the survey. And then I just want to talk a little bit about thankfulness and serving others. But first, let's get into this introduction and see what the good Lord has. My name's Shena, and glad you're joining me. The book of Nehemiah. Nehemiah, contemporary of Ezra and cupbearer to the king in the Persian palace, leads the third and last return to Jerusalem after the Babylonian exile. His concern for the welfare of Jerusalem and its inhabitants prompts him to take bold action. Granted permission to return to his homeland, Nehemiah challenges his countrymen to arise and rebuild the shattered wall of Jerusalem. In spite of opposition from without and abuse from within, the task is completed in only 52 days, a feat even the enemies of Israel must attribute to God's enabling. By contrast, the task of reviving and reforming the people of God within the rebuilt wall demands years of Nehemiah's godly life and leadership. Oh, so did you guys catch that? Like, basically, without God, we can't do anything, like the scripture says. Because it said here, even in the event of the enemies, you have to attribute what Nehemiah was able to accomplish to God. And even then, the rebuilding of the wall took years of Nehemiah's godly life and leadership. So it takes time to build something, right? To perfect something, to tweak things. Nothing happens overnight. We've got to work hard. The Hebrew for Nehemiah is Nehemiah, comfort of Yahweh. That's what Nehemiah means. Comfort of Yahweh. I like that. The book is named after his chief character, whose name appears in the opening phrase. The combined book of Ezra, Nehemiah is given the Greek title Esdras Deuteron, second Esdras, in the Septuagint, a 3rd century BC Greek language translation of the Hebrew Old Testament. The Latin title of Nehemiah is Liber Secudos Esdras, second book of Ezra. At this point, it is considered a separate book from Ezra and is later called Liber Nehemiah, book of Nehemiah. So these are Greek words, I'm guessing. Okay, I need some water. This is how my voice sounds early in the morning. Is it really annoying? Oh my gosh. The author of Nehemiah. Clearly, much of this book came from Nehemiah's personal memoirs. The reporting is remarkably candid and vivid. Certainly, chapter 1, verses 1 through 7, and chapter 5, or verse 5, and chapters 12, verses 27 through 43, and 13, verses 4 through 31 are the memoirs of Nehemiah. Some scholars think that Nehemiah composed those portions and compiled the rest. Others think that Ezra wrote chapter 7, verse 6 through chapter 12, verse 26, and chapter 12, 34 through chapter 13, verse 3, and that he compiled the rest, making use of Nehemiah's diary. A third view that neither wrote it seems least likely from the evidence. Nehemiah chapter 7, verses 5 through 73 is almost the same as Ezra chapter 2, verses 1 through 70, and both lists may have been taken from another record of the same period. As cupbearer to Artaxerxes I, Nehemiah holds a position of great responsibility. His role of tasting the king's wine to prevent him from being poisoned places Nehemiah in a position of trust and confidence as one of the king's advisors. Could you imagine having that job to taste the drink of the king to make sure it's not poisonous? Oh my goodness. As governor of Jerusalem from 444 to 432 BC, Nehemiah demonstrates courage, compassion for the oppressed, integrity, godliness, and selflessness. He is willing to give up the luxury and ease of the palace to help his people. That is so good. What great characteristics. Do you have any of those? Courage, compassion for the oppressed, integrity, godliness, and selflessness. And also think about that. How do you serve others? What have you given up? And that's kind of what I want to talk about at the end. So let's just chat about it now. How are you serving someone else? Especially this time of year with the holiday. Thanksgiving just passed and Christmas. What is it that you can do or have you done to make someone else's life better, right? And try to take our focus off just ourselves or maybe our, immediate family, gathering things for them for Christmas Day. But what can we do? And now, if you do that, that's fine, and that's up to you. But I'm talking about reaching out to maybe people less fortunate than you. Can you serve in a soup kitchen this month? Can you do the angel tree gifts, right? Or Toys for Tots, or smile a little bit more when you are out shopping and holding the door. Just what else can you do to serve someone else to make their life a little bit better? So just think about that, and how important that really is in the scope of things, because remember, that's why Jesus came to serve. Jesus came to serve others, serve the poor and the needy, and to help the lost, right? He came to seek and save the lost. So just kind of ask yourself, what is it you can do this month to help someone else, to help make their life a little bit better? How can you be a servant of the Lord? All right, this last section goes on to say, Nehemiah, he is a dedicated layman who has the right priorities and is concerned for God's work, who is able to encourage and rebuke at the right times, who is strong in prayer, and who gives all glory and credit to God. Oh, that's so good. Strong in prayer, and who gives all glory and credit to God. Yeah. Oh my goodness. That's so good. Are you strong in prayer? How strong is your prayer life and mine, right? And are we giving credit to God for everything? Are we bringing God into every area of our lives? The next section is the time of Nehemiah. It says, see the time of Ezra, because both Ezra and Nehemiah share the same historical background. The book of Nehemiah fits within the reign of Artaxerxes of Persia. Ezra is Artaxerxes' stepmother. What? Not Ezra, Esther. Oh my gosh, Esther is Artaxerxes' stepmother, and it is possible that she is instrumental in Nehemiah's appointment as the king's cupbearer. Nehemiah leaves Persia in the 20th year of Artaxerxes, returns to Persia in the 32nd year of Artaxerxes, and later leaves again for Jerusalem, perhaps about 425 BC. This book could not have been completed until after his second visit to Jerusalem. The historical reliability of this book is supported by the Elephantine Papyri. These ancient documents mention Sanballat and Jehohanan, and indicate that Bigvai replaces Nehemiah as governor of Judah by 410 BC. Malachi lives and ministers during Nehemiah's time, and a comparison of the books shows that many of the evils encountered by Nehemiah are specifically denounced by Malachi. The cold-hearted indifference toward God described in both books remains a problem in Israel during the 400 years before Christ, during which there is no revelation from God. Okay, the next section is the Christ of Nehemiah. Like Ezra, Nehemiah portrays Christ in his ministry of restoration. Nehemiah illustrates Christ in that he gives up a high position in order to identify with the plight of the people. I like that. You have to be able to identify with people. He comes with a specific mission and fulfills it, and his life is characterized by prayerful dependence upon God. You guys, I hope you're picking up. These are such really good little tidbits. Care for the plight of people and have a prayerful dependence upon God. In this book, everything is restored except the king. The temple is rebuilt, Jerusalem is reconstructed, the covenant is renewed, and the people are reformed. The Messianic line is intact, but the king is yet to come. The decree of Artaxerxes in his 20th year marks the beginning point of Daniel's prophecy of the 70 sets of 7. See Daniel 9, 24, 27. Oh, there's so much entwined here. Now listen and understand. 7 sets of 7 plus 62 sets of 7 will pass from the time of the command is given to rebuild Jerusalem until the Anointed One comes. Wow, and you know that number 7 is perfection. Jerusalem will be rebuilt with streets and strong defenses, despite the perilous times in Daniel 9:25. The Messiah will come at the end of the 69 weeks, and this is exactly fulfilled in AD 33, the Christ of Daniel. Oh, wow. The next section is Keys to Nehemiah. The key word, Jerusalem walls. While Ezra deals with the religious restoration of Judah, Nehemiah is primarily concerned with Judah's political and geographical restoration. The first 7 chapters are devoted to the rebuilding of Jerusalem's walls because Jerusalem was the spiritual political center of Judah. Without walls, Jerusalem could hardly be considered a city at all. And Persian ruler over Jerusalem, Nehemiah also establishes firm civil authority. Ezra and Nehemiah work together to build the people spiritually and morally so that restoration will be complete. Oh, I like that. When God's restoring you and healing you, He's building up your spiritual strength and your morals, right? Your character. I like that. God does restore. I'm telling you. He heals the brokenhearted. I believe that. I have seen evidence of it in my life this week, and it has just left me in awe, in complete awe of God and His power and His faithfulness and His promises. Oh my God. Okay, the next section is the key verse, which is Nehemiah 6:15 through and 16, and also chapter 8, verse 8. So the first verse says, "So on October 2nd, the wall was finally finished, just 52 days after we begun. When our enemies and the surrounding nations heard about it, they were frightened and humiliated. They realized that this work had been done with the help of our God." And then the next section says, "They read the book of the law of God and clearly explained the meaning of what was being read, helping the people understand each passage." The key chapter is 9. The key to the Old Testament is the covenant, which is its theme and unifying factor. Israel's history can be divided according to the nation's obedience or disobedience to God's conditional covenant, blessings from obedience, and destruction from disobedience. Oh, that's so true. When you obey God, there are blessings. When you disobey His word, there is destruction. That's very, very clear. Nehemiah 9 records that upon completion of the Jerusalem wall, the nation reaffirmed its loyalty to the covenant. And just to go back on those words, blessing, obedience, disobedience, and instruction, really take heed to that, and kind of choose a side. We cannot be lukewarm for the Lord. We've got to be doers of the word. And when you find yourself out of character, right, or saying something you shouldn't have, just immediately, repent and immediately say, "Lord, forgive me." Catch yourself and turn that thing around, And that takes spiritual maturity and strength to daily, confess where we've gone wrong or where we've erred. But we want to always, go back to that place of obedience. And I know for me, really just talking to my daughter, Bren, and as she's, going through her stuff, I've got to remember, she's growing and she's learning how to navigate this world. And when she gets upset about something quickly, I cannot react to her. I've got to stay cool, calm, and collected, right? As Tony Gaskin says, you gotta have that emotional intelligence. You cannot, as a parent, fly off the handle when your kids are expressing themselves, even if they're doing it in the wrong way. We've got to teach them the right way. So I can't start yelling at her because I'm frustrated, right? And I know I'm not the only parent who's done that. So let's work on that. All right, for all of us who've got young kids, because, they are going to learn from us, and they're mainly learning our bad habits before the good ones. So we've really got to do better, not saying this to make anybody feel bad. I'm talking to myself here. We've got to catch ourselves. So Dolly and I had a really good moment driving to school yesterday, dropping her off. The moment wasn't so good getting out of the door, but when we got in the car, I just immediately prayed and asked forgiveness and said my affirmations, my 5 I am statements, which we've been starting to do lately on the way to school. And I said, Bren, after I was done, I said, Bren, say your affirmations. But I heard her little voice. I couldn't hear what she was saying, but I heard her praying first. And then after her little prayer, she said her affirmations louder. So I just thank God for that. It was a sweet moment on my ears. So hopefully that can encourage someone. The next section in the introduction is the survey of Nehemiah. Nehemiah is closely associated with the ministry of his contemporary Ezra. Ezra is a priest who brings spiritual revival. Nehemiah is a civil official who brings physical and political reconstruction and leads the people in moral reform. My goodness, God is so specific with the talents and the gifts he gives people. They combine to make effective team in rebuilding the apostolic remnant. Malachi, the last Old Testament prophet, also ministers during this time to provide additional moral and spiritual direction. The book of Nehemiah takes us to the end of the historical account in the Old Testament. About 400 years before the birth of the promised Messiah, its two divisions are the reconstruction of the wall, chapters 1 through 7, and the restoration of the people, 8 through 13. The reconstruction of the wall, it says, Nehemiah's great concern for his people and the welfare of Jerusalem leads him to take bold action. The walls of Jerusalem, destroyed by Nebuchadnezzar in 586 BC, evidently have been almost rebuilt after 464 BC when Artaxerxes I took the throne of Persia. When he hears that opposition led to their second deconstruction, Nehemiah prays on the behalf of his people and then secures Artaxerxes' permission, provision, and protection for the massive project of rebuilding the wall. The return under Nehemiah in 444 BC takes place 13 years after the return led by Ezra and 94 years after the return led by Zerubbabel. Nehemiah inspects the walls and challenges the people to rebuild. Work begins immediately on the wall and its gates, with people building portions corresponding to where they are living. However, opposition quickly arises, first in the form of mockery, and then in the form of conspiracy when the work is progressing at an alarming rate. Nehemiah overcomes threats of force by setting half of the people on military watch and half on construction. While the external opposition continues to mount, internal opposition also surfaces. The wealthier Jews are abusing and oppressing the people, forcing them to mortgage their property and sell their children into slavery. What is happening? Nehemiah again deals with the problem by twin means of prayer and action. Oh, the people are turning on their own people. But Nehemiah goes back to the basics. He prays and then takes action to deal with it. It goes on to say he also leads by example when he sacrifices his salary. In spite of deceit, slander, and treachery, Nehemiah continues to trust in God to press on with singleness of mind until the work is completed. Oh, I love this singleness of mind. This is something this week that I was really thinking about, the double-mindedness as far as the healing process goes and letting go. We've got to, not we, but I had to learn this week to let go, but then to take that letting go back, and then to let go of someone again, and then take it back causes confusion. We've got to have a mindset on the Lord's plan for us and His will. And when we let go, we have to truly surrender that thing, right? That action, that behavior to God, and then leave it there and don't look back. Remember Lot? His wife looked back, she turned into a pillar of salt. We've got to stay focused. Stay focused. There's so much in this introduction, you guys, that I'm hearing. I hope you're getting it, especially for leaders. This section on the keys to Nehemiah. Listen to it again if you're in a position where you have people that work under you, because it's so good. It's so good to be in prayer and taking proper action. But you can't take proper action for your staff if you're not in prayer, right? And knowing how to direct them and lead them. So it goes on to say the task is accomplished in an incredible 52 days, and even the enemies recognize that it can only have been accomplished with the help of God. And again, that's chapter 6, verse 16. And then the last section here for the introduction is the restoration of the people, which are chapters 8 through 13. Let me get some water. Yeah, I needed that. Okay. Okay, Tracy Ann. Oh my gosh. Drink your water today, everybody. Drink your water today. Half your body weight in ounces. You can do it. The restoration of the people. The construction of the walls is followed by consecration and consolidation of the people. Ezra the priest is the leader of the spiritual revival, reminiscent of the reforms he led 13 years earlier. Ezra stands on the special wooden podium after the completion of the walls and gives the people, a marathon reading of the law, translating from the Hebrew into the Aramaic so they can understand. They respond with weeping, confession, obedience, and rejoicing. Look at these results Nehemiah is getting because he's praying. The people are weeping, confessing, and obeying and rejoicing. Oh my God, those are some serious results. As a life coach, I'm thinking about that, like as we help people, or I help people, or if you're also a life coach, like, these are the results you want: people weeping and confessing and obeying the Lord and rejoicing, like, over their lives, right? Like weeping over the revelation they're getting, or just the cleansing, right? I'm thinking about, I know sometimes when you're going through something and you just have that moment when you have that good cry, and how it's cleansing and it just feels better, and you can confess the things and get honest with yourself about what's really going on in your life and the changes you need to make to finally get to a point where you want to obey the Lord. And then you can rejoice. You can have that joy, that true joy that only the Lord can give. Oh my goodness, that's so good. The Levites, let's go on. The Levites and priests lead them in great prayer that surveys God's past work of deliverance and loyalty on behalf of his people and magnifies God's attributes of holiness, justice, mercy, and love. The covenant is then renewed with God as the people commit themselves to separate from the Gentiles in marriage and to obey God's commands. Lots are drawn to determine who will remain in Jerusalem and who will return to the cities of their inheritance. 1/10 are required to stay in Jerusalem, and the rest of the land is resettled by the people and priest. The walls of Jerusalem are dedicated to the Lord in a joyful ceremony accompanied by instrumental and vocal music. Unfortunately, Ezra's revival is short-lived, and Nehemiah, who returned to Persia in 432 BC, makes a second trip to Jerusalem about 425 BC to reform the people. He cleanses the temple, enforces the Sabbath, and requires the people to put away all foreign wives. And that concludes our introduction of Nehemiah. I don't know about you, but I heard so many things. There's so many good things in there. And Nehemiah is a force to be reckoned with. I mean, he's someone to study, you guys, based on this introduction. He didn't give up. He did not give up. He's still implementing things, cleansing the temple at the end of this introduction, and enforcing the Sabbath, and having people put away wives. So he's all about change and reformation. So if you guys, let's see, who are my OGs? Tracy Ann, Lisa Smiles especially. Remember in the beginning, reading the introduction, I used to be yawning all the time. I used to just think, oh my God, I'm never going to get through these. But now, as time goes on, God's changing my heart on that. And I'm really enjoying the backstory first, right? And I think my attitude's gotten better about it. So maybe that's half the battle right there, right? Let's change our attitude about some things and it might not seem so daunting. That's a good lesson. Hey, let me know in the comments what you learned by hearing this introduction today. And I said in the beginning when I started reading that I would talk about giving, and I did it around the 8-minute mark. So if you're one of those people who fast forward to the end, I talked about it a little bit around the 8-minute mark. But I also wanted to touch on thankfulness this month and an exercise that I'm doing. Today's the 2nd of December, or the 3rd, is the night before you go to bed at night. Leave by your nightstand a piece of paper and a pencil or a pen, and write on the top 5 things I'm thankful for, and then list 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So when you wake up in the morning, it's the first thing you see. You can write down what's fresh on your mind, what you're thankful for. No thing is too small, no thing is too big. And then just keep that same paper by your bed, and when you go to bed tonight, write 5 things I'm thankful for, and list 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And just keep doing that all month, all month, all month. And then at the end of the month, you've got that tangible paper right there you can look at and be reminded of the goodness of God, and realize, your life isn't so bad. Because when you're focusing on being thankful, you can't be depressed, right? You can't be thankful and depressed at the same time. It is impossible. And I think I've talked about this before, shared this in my coaching, to just try it. Try to have a thankful thought and a depressed thought at the same time. You can't. You have to pick one. So we've got to decide how we're going to live our lives, what we're going to think about, and let's go towards a thankful heart this month. So if you're going to try that exercise, let me know in the chat, and or in the comments rather. And yeah, I think that'd be neat. So many things we learned today. I'm thankful for you. If you made it to the 32-minute mark, let me know. Let me know. Let me know. All right, You Can Heal family. I love you. You can do all things through Christ who strengthens you. And always remember, true healing begins with self-love. Why? Because God is love and He lives on the inside of you. We'll talk soon. Bye.